All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the replay. I always hit record and then reintroduce myself for the replay. We have been on here for about 17 minutes going over leaderboards and some other things. I am Jim Larson. I am direct to Symmetry Financial Group by way of Jamie Susie, Sarah Reinecke, Jacob Pogue in the Marshall Wayland hierarchy. I am an equity partner thanks to the incomparable Kelly Bush. I am a managing vice president thanks to Kelly, Jill, Joe, and Amber, and a lot of you guys winning and doing really exciting and really fun things. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight Andrew Costas here. He is the senior account executive for Americo. And Andrew, I'm going to go ahead, pin this video, spotlight this, and then I'm going to come on here with you so you're not feeling like super alone. I always hate that people like spotlight me and then it's like, whoa, this is just me. So I always like to come up with you, but hey man, I'm really excited to have you on here. I know you and I, like, we've met, but we've not really interacted much. And I love Jamie and Corey. I've known Jamie and Corey for years. And from the minute I came to Symmetry, they have been singing your praises from like day one. You are the best rep. You're the most fun rep. You're the most responsive rep. Like they sing your I'm like, I need to know this guy. Why do I not know him better than I do? Like, this is terrible. So I'm super grateful for your time and glad you were able to come on our call with us here.
Yeah, absolutely. And just by way of introduction, I typically don't have two random beds in a backdrop. I actually just checked in the hotel room about 20 minutes ago, and I tried to do this from the lobby, but 100 of my closest friends were drinking in the lobby. So I thought it'd be better to not have the people taking shots in the background. So usually this isn't the backdrop, but I'm super excited to be on this too. I was actually just texting with Jamie earlier today, and I said, man, I've met you at a couple different events in passing, maybe for a minute or two here. Always had a tremendous amount of respect for the growth that you've had. Everybody on this call, it's not by accident when you hit 130. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes in. There's probably twice as much work behind the scenes that people don't see to set everyone up for success. So I'm honored to be on this too. I'm excited for this conversation. I told Jamie, I said, I'm nervous to jump on here. And she said, oh, don't be nervous. Just act like you're talking to Corey and I, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
So
it's great.
I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun.
So before we even dive into like Americo, and I'd love to kind of just hear who Americo is in the marketplace and obviously walk us through some of the products that we've come to know pretty well, but talk to us about you. What got you into life insurance in general, and then what got you over to Americo eventually?
Yeah, great question. So actually, I was born and raised in Kansas City and went to school in Arkansas, played soccer in college, and I came back and my dad said, I'm kind of done paying for you. You got to go do something with your life, right? I think everybody's probably been there at some point. And so at the time, Americo was hiring, and this was 22 years ago, I think it was. And I thought I would do insurance for like 6 months. I was like, cool, like I'll go get a job. I'll be this corporate guy. This will be fun. I'll get an apartment and, try to be a grown up and all that kind of stuff. And 22 years later, man, I have a wife and 3 kids. It's provided for my family. So, I always judge the quality of a company relative to how does it provide overall for my family. And at the end of the day, it provides a great lifestyle for my family. So I absolutely love it. I get a chance to, I think I always say I have one of the coolest jobs in the country. I get a chance to travel. Sorry, this light's like flickering on and off here. It's like, but I get a chance to travel all over the country, which is kind of a unique perspective, right? Because most of the time in people in sales roles, you travel like regionally. So you're like, cool, I'll be in these 3 states. I get a chance to travel over the country and get a chance to meet a lot of you and talk with a lot of you at different boot camps, different meetings. Super excited for Denver. Now that I saw that flyer, I'm gonna have to text Jamie and figure out how I could sneak in to be a VP at the party Tuesday night, because that looks like a blast. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, but enjoyed every minute of it. So
yeah, that's also Americo's been your career.
it has, which nowadays is pretty unique, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just most of the time, and nothing wrong with that. Most of the time, people, are in a job 5, 6, 7 years and look for another opportunity. And selfishly for me, it speaks volumes for the company I work for. Because the reality is if I didn't believe in it, I'd go somewhere else.
Yeah.
but I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy getting to hang out with folks like yourself, and I truly enjoy again what I get a chance to do. You know, I'm looking at my phone right now, and there's 3 or 4 text messages that came through about, hey, can you help with this? Can you fix this? And that's really my job, and my goal is to be able to come alongside you all and help you guys be more successful. I certainly am not going to lead you guys to be successful because I'd screw it up. I just want to come alongside you and say, hey, man, if you need guidance, if you need help, if you need something pushed through, let me see how I can partner with you to make you be the most successful version of yourself, and also the most successful way to build your agency.
Now, obviously, you operate as a liaison between Symmetry, Quility, and Americo. Are we one of your clients and contracts? Like, do you work with other IMOs as their liaison, or are you unique to us?
That's correct. I work with a couple different groups.
Okay.
So it gets a little crazy,
Yeah.
in a good way at times. You know, I always say that my wife knows more about symmetry agents and agencies and all of this than probably most wives do. Um, but uh, but yeah, I get a chance to work with multiple groups. You know, I don't just say this just because I'm on the call. Symmetry is certainly one of my favorites, and the main reason for that is the culture. You know, whether things are going really well and we have real positive news, or whether it's something we have to deliver news that maybe isn't as positive, Symmetry always has a good reputation of being professional, and making sure that the interactions are always professional, regardless of if, hey, good news, you got promoted, or good news, we got this issued, or bad news, we couldn't quite get this one issued. The level of professionalism is always at a 10.
Mm.
And I attribute that to Ellison and Pope and Casey all the way down, through the agent that just got appointed yesterday. So I think it's a really cool culture, which actually makes it a lot of fun to work in.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love it. I mean, Symmetry is my only experience in the life insurance world too. So it's like you with America. So I don't have a lot of experiences with other IMOs. All I know is it's been really, really great for me. And I love it. And I love the culture, and I love who I'm surrounded with. And so really just haven't had a need to look anywhere else.
And nor should you. I think the culture is second to none. I think that, you know, I've had a chance to work with. I've known Pope for probably 20 years now, and known Brandon for many years, and Casey as well. And the cool thing is what they talk about on stage, and what they talk about on their national call on Wednesdays, and things along those lines. I've seen behind the scenes, and they live it out the same way.
Mm.
There's some folks that get on stage and it sounds really appealing, it sounds dynamic, and I've known those people for a while, and then afterwards you're like, man, that's not the same person that was just on stage, and those guys live it out. So it's always fun to work with them. So
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
it is. So this was your first entrance into life insurance with
Yeah,
Symmetry.
yeah. I mean, I
That's
have I
awesome.
had sales experience. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've even heard of my story, but I actually came to Symmetry in January of 2020, direct to Jacob Pogue.
Is that
I was
right?
here, yeah, I was here for like 4 months, and then I quit because it was hard and I didn't like it. And I quit. And before I quit, though, I recruited two brand new agents by the names of Sarah Reinecke and Jamie Susi. And then I quit. And then I've been friends with them. So I watched them over 2 years, saw what they did. And then I called Jamie like December of 21. And I was like, hey, my license is still active. I think I'm going to come back. So I came back direct to Jamie in January of 22.
That I didn't know that story. That's awesome. And Sarah Reinecke actually texted me a little while ago and was talking about how I think it's either her group or a portion of her group has been on the leaderboard the top 2 or 3 weeks, and she's super excited about it. So I texted her back and said, I'm really glad I know someone famous. And yeah, and she said, well, it's about time. I was like, no, I was talking about Jared, but humble yourself, Sarah, but it's fine. So but good folks though. I can see why you would want to work with them. They're great people.
They're good. And yeah, I've known the Reineckes, and then Susie Nee Neighbors. I've known them for a long, long time. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was good. I've known them before Symmetry, but yeah, it's great to be connected and working with them here.
You
Um,
bet.
all right, Andrew, I've got a team of people here that we just last week we had Lauren and Audrey on from, Banner Legal in General. And that was the first time I'd ever had the insurance carrier come on a call. That just had not been something we've done, and I know my team's hungry for it. Like, we
Mhm.
want product knowledge. We want to know how to best fit our clients with the product. So I'm going to kind of just turn this show over to you here. Walk us through Americo, where you guys sit in the marketplace, what you have, what you're looking for. The floor is yours. I may interrupt you if there's something I'm like, hey, we could use some clarification on that. So I might
Okay.
just interrupt and be like, hey, can you expand on that? But other than that, I'm going to shut my mouth, and the floor is yours, my man.
I think that sounds awesome. And what I may do as well as I know in the agenda you listed out Q&A at the end. I may talk for about 15 minutes and then let's do some Q&A at the end because I'm sure, and please interject as you go along as I go along as well. But if you have questions, put it in the chat or just hold on to them. And the value in this for me is I think everybody's been in meetings before, Zooms before, where someone talks at you for 20 or 30 minutes. You're like, dude, I got it, man. Like you don't need to talk at me. So I like these to be interactive. So I'll hit on some key points that I've found that over the years that have come along, America's come alongside and made people more successful. But I know there's going to be questions, and I'll certainly put my contact information in at the end. So if there's any follow-up questions, or if you're sitting there tomorrow, you're like, oh man, what did he talk about with this? We'll get you that information. But the goal from an American standpoint. So if somebody were to ask, like, for lack of a better term, a mission statement, and you walk away and you say, what's America's goal? Our goal is to be the easiest company to do business with. And every carrier you talk to is going to have that same type of statement. We want to be easy. We want to provide great service, kind of the buzzwords out there, right? But one of the things that we try to do to back that up is if we give you a really simple process and we give you great products and we give you good service, those three things together more times than not win the day. And so one thing I will tell you up front is I've been on a lot of Zoom calls over the last 4 years. We've never been a company to bash other companies. We've seen recordings where people do that. I think that's out of line. So what we talk about is just our value proposition and why we think that we're excelling with Symmetry. So when you think about that in order, process, products, and service, I know that's kind of backwards because a lot of times you hear, let's dive into products and details and issue ages and all that. The reality is we want to keep it simple. And so when we start with our process, the reason we start with that is we think that creates a really big niche in the market. So our goal is to give you a decision, yes or no, with a client faster than anyone else. And when we give you a yes, put money in your bank account faster than anyone else. Because I think if you think about this, if we were all 45 of us or so were in a room and I asked you what's the goal? The goal is to protect as many families as you can and provide the best income for your family that you can. So if you do it in that order, it seems to be really successful. So with our e-application, a couple things that make it unique, a couple things that make it different. So number one, we're going to give you an instant decision. So it kind of freaks people out, to be honest with you. If you're used to using other carriers, and by the way, Symmetry only represents the best carriers out there. So if you're using other carriers, congratulations, you found a great carrier. We'd love to earn your business. But one of the things that we have found is when we give you an instant decision, we can tell you yes or no right there on the spot. So no longer do you have to wait 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days to get an answer. We can tell you right away. And as a matter of fact, we were doing a Zoom just on Monday and was talking about our instant decision process. And I had an agent call me Tuesday morning and he said, hey, I used your instant decision process and it freaked me out. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, I was used to using company ABC and I got to the end of the process with Americo and it said approved as applied for. And he said, I kind of stood there for a minute because I'm like, well, what do I do now? Like, do I call the company? Do I have to like do something different? And then I was like, no, you're done. He's like, no. I'm used to having it come offline and have this whole pitch about how I'm going to fight with underwriters and Jim, I'm going to fight to get that policy approved for you. And he's like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, I guess I'm done. So, so I say that kind of joking, kind of serious because it actually did just happen yesterday. But that's the goal is again, ease of doing business. Because if you think about it from this standpoint, is now, and I'll steal this analogy from someone else, but so put yourself in the shoes of a client. So if you're a client and you filled out a lead, let's use an example of this. Let's say you wanted to get something done with your house and you needed a ladder to get it done. So you go to Home Depot on a Saturday. You got like 4 hours on Saturday without your wife, without your kids. You're like, cool, I'm going to knock this out. This is on my to-do list. I'm going to get this done. You go to Home Depot and they're like, yeah, I mean, we got like 30 ladders. We got like a 50-foot, a 20-foot, a step ladder, a ladder to the bins. Like, what do you need? And you're like, yeah, here's the ladder I need. They're like, awesome. And you're like, cool, I'll go ahead and buy it right now. They're like, sounds good. We'll get it to you on Friday. You're like, no, no, no. I have a 4 hour window right now to be able to get this done. They're like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but we'll get it to you later on. You'd be like, well, no, I'll just go somewhere else because I want to get this done right now. So when you think about that, if that's the client's viewpoint when they fill out leads, that's where Americo comes in with their e-app, because that client's giving you their time because they want to check it off the list. They want to know that, you know what, I completed a lead, or I completed, whether digital or whether it's a mail-in lead or whether it's a referral. They want to know that, you know what, by the end of that conversation, they're done. That's one less thing they have to worry about, whether it's a loved one that was asking them about it, whether they were just thinking about insurance. So when we can give you an instant decision, it not only gives you the gratification of knowing that it's done, it also gives your client the gratification knowing that it's done, because ultimately that's why they filled out the lead to begin with. They didn't fill it out to wait 5 days to get an answer. They filled it out because they want an answer immediately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. I
So
just
so a
love that
couple
from a
things.
philosophical point. It's good.
Yeah, I thought, and I can't take credit for that. Somebody, I was on another Zoom and someone brought that up and I wrote it down. So, the best form of, yeah. So, if duplicatable systems here, right? But what makes our e-app different? So again, if all of us were in a room and I said, raise your hand if you ever gotten to the end of an e-application, you feel, or an application in general, you get all the way to the end, and then you find out the client forgot to tell you about the other medicine cabinet, right? They're sitting there and they told you the whole time all they're doing is taking aspirin. And then you get to the end and you're like, how did they get kicked out from prescription check? I thought they're only taking aspirin. Well, what we do with our e-app is we actually move the prescription and MIB check up to the front. So before you ask a health question, we're going to tell you if that client's a good fit or not. So you can almost think about it with the way we always think about it, is the most thorough risk assessment in the industry. Because if you did a risk assessment with another company, and I'll pick on Stephanie here for a second. So if I'm an agent and I'm talking to Stephanie, and Stephanie says, you know what, I have A, B, and C conditions, and I call an insurance company and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they say, yep, it's good to go. No problem, no issues there. Or they say, unfortunately, we can't move forward. Well, we just automated that whole process for you. So instead of having to call a company, we did it all automated. And we say it's the most thorough risk assessment because, again, just picking on Stephanie for a second, sometimes clients will tell you what they want you to hear, and sometimes they don't tell you the full story. Well, the nice thing about using Americo's e-app, again, in that scenario, I'd say, Stephanie, I tell you what, within the first couple of minutes, we're going to find out if you're a good fit for Americo. So you sure there's not anything really important that you're leaving out, because as soon as we get this authorization signed, in about 10 seconds, we're going to know if you're a good fit for this product. What it does is, again, it gives that client that immediate thought of, okay, wait a second, I need to make sure, is there anything, did I have a cancer, heart attack, stroke, any of the big ones that come alongside. So we run prescription check and we run MIB up front. And two reasons we do that. Number one, it saves you time. The reality is that if you're talking with a client, I'm sure we've all been there, where sometimes clients will seem a little pushy, where they're like, yeah, Jim, I don't know if I have time for this. Yeah, I know I filled out a lead. Well, if the rebuttal is, Jim, can you give me 5 minutes of your time? We can see if we can get you pre-approved. Most clients are going to say, yeah, we'll give you 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, when you get that yes or no, when it's a yes, then you ask the health questions, grab the banking beneficiary information, and you're off and running. But on the off chance it's a no, on the off chance we can't approve every client, you're still right there with the client. You can pivot to another product, another company, another carrier, but you can make sure that that client's getting coverage before you leave. And as importantly, that also means that you're going to be able to get the best ROI on the lead you purchased. Because again, the best way to stay in business is to be profitable, right? So if you can take every lead, if we always say that groups like Talking with Susie and Reineke and others, if the agents that really successful when they lead with Americo, they never lose a sale, because we'll tell you yes or no faster. When we tell you yes, you ask the health questions, wrap up the app, you're done. On the off chance we tell you no, you pivot somewhere else. But again, you're right there with the client, and you make sure before that appointment's done, that client has a policy in place, whether it's Americo or whether it's another company. So does that make sense?
I want to see this in the comments here right now. Put a 1 in the comments if you've been 30 plus minutes in with a client only to have a medical issue pop up that makes them ineligible. And now they're already fed up with the process. So they want to be off the phone and you lost your chance to pivot. That's a lot of ones have been there. Yeah, that's the process here is awesome. Love that.
You bet. And so the last piece, and we'll dive into a couple products here and then leave some time. What makes our, yeah, so I would imagine, again, if we were all in a room and I asked you how many of your agents sell virtually, I'm going to guess that probably 100% of them do. You may come across a client every now and again you're face to face with just because you're in the same city or something like that, but overall you're probably selling virtually. What we do through our signing process, we actually, selfishly, I'm paid to say this, but we think it's the easiest signing process in the industry. So how it works on our end is, again, if I'll pick on Jennifer this time. So if I'm selling Jennifer a policy and I'm in Kansas City and she's in a different city, so I would ask Jennifer, I would say, hey, Jennifer, can I grab your cell phone number? And odds are that's probably the number you're talking with them anyways. So she would give me your cell phone number. I put it in the system. The system sends a text message to Jennifer with a 6-digit code. So it's always numbers. It's not uppercase, lowercase, hyphens, all that jazz that no one can figure out anyway. So it's not the password that like NASA wants you to use to like log into your computer kind of deal. It's a very simple 6-digit code. She gives me the code back. I put it in the system. That's her signature. So the reason we did that was there's a lot of text signing options out there. And there's a lot of companies that talk about, well, we have the signing method. And more times than not, it still ties back to a link where the client has to log in, and it's a DocuSign type link where you're checking, I agree. Nothing wrong with that. But half the time you end up being tech support. And then what happens is, if the client, again, using that analogy, fall back on the Home Depot analogy. If Jim's going to Home Depot and buying a ladder, if the line's really long and the register doesn't work well, I'll go to Lowe's. I'm good, right? I'll go somewhere else. So our thought process is, if we make the signing process simple, all it does is validate everything you've told that client up until that point. The life insurance is important. It's very easy to apply. If you make the signing process simple, they walk away and think, man, that was everything Jim told me was accurate. That was a very smooth process. But if you make it really hard to sign or difficult to sign, or they don't understand how it all signs, all of a sudden there's a little bit of doubt in that client's mind thinking, gosh, do I really have time for this? Is $50 a month really in my budget? Should I shop around even more? Maybe this isn't for me. But if you make the process simple, the whole experience for the client, which ultimately is a great experience for you, resonates very well. So signing process about easy as you can get. Interestingly enough, as a funny quick story, we used to do email signatures, and we messed up on our end. And the email that would go out was do not reply. It was like Americo's signature at do not reply at Americo.com. So we sent out enough of those that Google labeled us spam, right? So imagine selling an Americo policy. Imagine, Jim, you're selling someone a policy and you're like, hey, the 6-digit code went to your email, but you're going to have to check your junk folder. Like, talk about like overcoming objections, right?
Yeah.
They're like, wait a second, this is a reputable company and it went to my junk folder. Like, what the hell's going on here? So we had to switch it to text signature to make it easier. Again, it works pretty flawlessly across the board. It makes it very simple for the client to understand. We actually designed it initially because of the senior space, and then we realized everybody loved it, so we use it across the board. So that's our process. Products we'll talk about here. As you all know, we launched a brand new IUL about 3 months ago. As a thank you to you all and a thank you to Symmetry. I was on the phone with Brandon Ellison earlier today, and it's absolutely amazing the amount of business that you all have sent in with that product. There's 2 types of IULs as I was jumping on. I know that just to do a quick comparison here, one IUL product is more, there's 2 buckets for IULs. One of them is more investment based, which is going to be more your F&G, National Life Group. Those are great products where you're not really so much worried about a death benefit as much as you are, how do you overfund the policy? How does it last till 120? How do you invest off of it? Great products. The second version of IULs is more death benefit driven, which is how cheap can we get the premium for the most death benefit with an upside for the cash value growing. That's the space Americo plays in. So if you have a client that's really looking for true like hardcore investments, I'm going to put $1,000 a month in. I want a $20,000 death benefit, overfund it, have certain indexes that are specific to that carrier. Great companies out there to do that. What we look for on ours is more that mortgage protection, that permanent protection space where a client says, you know what, I have 70, 80, 90, $100 a month. I want to get the most death benefit I can and also have that policy have an upside to it. So a couple features of our IUL that make it pretty unique is some of our competitors have like a 20-year no lapse guarantee. So we have what we call a primary guarantee, which means the policy is guaranteed to last at least 20 years. Generally speaking, it's averaging closer to 27 to 30 years. So again, great selling point when you're talking to clients. Again, when living benefits are included, so critical, chronic, and terminal illness. I know you have a nationwide team. The only variance of that is California. For whatever reason, California is a little bit harder on the DOI side to get everything approved. So this is recorded, so we'll leave it at that. But we do have terminal illness in California, but not critical and chronic, but every other state, critical, chronic, and terminal illness. One of the things that we really found that has resonated very well is through our e-application, and specifically on the IUL as well, is we give the option to have the policy electronically delivered to the client, which means that we give the option to have, so if I'm selling Jim a policy, I can have the policy emailed, a copy of the policy emailed to Jim within about 10 minutes of the policy being done. The reason that's so cool on the IUL perspective, when you're talking with a client, you've ran through the illustration, the client likes it, the client signs via text, and by the time that policy is issued, which is at the end of that conversation, within 10 minutes of it, the client has a copy of what they purchased plus the illustration. So again, there's not guesswork. There's not a client calling you 5 days later saying, hey, Jim, I still don't have my policy yet. I know you said that it builds cash value. I still don't have the illustration. All that's taken care of. So what we're finding is more and more agents are absolutely loving the e-app. They're loving the IUL piece because of all the features to it, but also the fact that a client can get a copy of what they purchased very quickly. So the IUL is certainly selling. I've never been one to, I've been doing this 20 years now. I've never been one to jump on a call and tell you, here's how to sell it. Obviously, you just looking at the numbers at the beginning of this call, you guys have no problem figuring out how to sell products. You all do a phenomenal job with that. I actually just like to talk about the IUL piece is awesome. Again, we have one competitor in that space that does a good job as well. We thought they wanted a little competition. So I don't know if they wanted the competition, but we thought they did. So but one of the things you will find though, if you compare price points on the specifically with our main competitor in that space, you're going to find on the male side our price points are usually $5 and $6 cheaper per month. So again, cheaper premiums, more death benefit. It does go up to 450,000 in coverage, and it never drops off. So in other words, 18 to age 75, you can always get up to 450,000 in coverage. So really cool product there. The other one I'll highlight, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions, is Eagle Premier. That is like the tried and true, like symmetry go-to, critical period coverage, final expense, phenomenal product. It's designed for individuals ages 40 to 85. A couple cool benefits. It has accidental death benefit built in, which interestingly enough is a really key benefit. I could tell you stories at another time about the importance of that. We've talked to our claims team several times about the importance of it. But what that means is if a client dies of an accident, we double the death benefit. So it's not an upsell, it's built into the product itself. So the value in that is, if you think about when you're writing that product, is God forbid the client passes away of an accident, instead of $10,000, they get 20,000. Instead of 40, they get 80. Again, it's not an upsell, it's built in. The other thing Eagle has is what we call our quit smoking advantage. That gives you the opportunity to have smokers get non-smoker rates for 3 years. So the difference between smokers and non-smokers is usually about 50% to 70% more in premium, depending on the age and the company. So if we can give you non-smoker rates for 3 years, it's kind of think about it as our wellness program, for lack of a better term. It's our way of saying, hey, we don't judge against smokers, but if we can encourage you to quit, maybe your wife or husband or doctor, someone's been pressuring you to quit. We give them 3 years to quit smoking, and all they have to do is quit for 1 year. And we give them 3 years because most of the time in a senior space, most seniors didn't start smoking at 60. They probably started smoking when Marlboro Reds were kind of a cool thing back in the day. So we give them a few year runway to stop. But it's our way of kind of a wellness type program. So the Eagle Premier, the cool thing too is it has 11 health questions, very simple. As a matter of fact, we actually designed that product specifically for telesales or virtual sales. So what you're going to find is that instead of the questions being this big paragraph, they read in almost conversational format. It's like, have you ever been treated, tested positive for, and then it's like A, B, C, as opposed to everybody's been there where you read this really long health paragraph. And at the end, the client's like, what'd you say? And you're like, damn, I got to read that thing again. So we tried to write it to where at least it makes a little more sense. So those are two of the products. And the last thing I'll close with, and we'll do Q&A, is we worked with Symmetry for a long time on putting together some fun incentives, some fun trips, something like that makes it unique, different. So we launched in I guess Denver was August, I believe, of last year was conference. And we launched our first trip with Symmetry to go to St. Lucia. And we had an absolute blast. We actually ended up taking close to 30 agents and then a plus one, then some Symmetry home office. And it's funny how like the Americo home office people, all of a sudden everybody wants to go. So like our CEO's like, well, I'll go. Our president's like, I'll go. I'm like, well, that's neat. I asked them all to go to conference in Denver. They're busy, but when we go to St. Lucia, all of a sudden
All of
everybody's
a
schedule's
sudden,
free.
yeah.
It's weird how that works out, right? So, but it's good because we can put their name on the expense report and it flies right through. So it's a win-win
Yeah.
across the board. But that was our first trip. It was a blast. The next one, we're actually in the middle of the contest period right now. It started March 1st and it runs through the end of August. So we're about almost 3 months in. We're going to go to Whistler, Canada, to the Four Seasons. So we're going to go in the beginning of December. So basically, you have a contest that runs from March 1st to the end of August, and we'll go December 1 through December 5th. The contest, how it works, it's 40,000 in net paid commissions. So I'd like to hang out on this point for just a second because net paid commissions for everybody on this call means something different. So for net paid commissions for Jim would probably be overrides because you're probably not in the field writing business on a daily basis like maybe you were in 2022, 2023. So for a brand new agent, net paid commissions is probably going to be based on personal production. And then as you were showing the different graphics and talking about key leaders and agency owners and so on up, that's going to look a little different because that's probably some personal production plus overrides. So we look at net paid as how much money have we given you, put money in your bank account, less any chargebacks that come back. And if it's above 40,000 and you have to be in the top 30, and the reason we chose top 30, it's not an arbitrary number. We chose it because we took 30 people to St. Lucia. So we're not geniuses here. We just cheat and we're like, okay, that seemed to work last time. Let's do it again. So 30,000 or 40,000 in net paid commissions. I know Symmetry has leaderboards. We send it to, I just talked with them earlier today. They need to update it better on HQ. I think the last update was April, and I promise you there's been updates since April. So they should be updating that more frequently. But it's our way of saying thanks. It'll be a blast. So and if you're somebody like me so my wife loves to like ski and snowboard and all that, and I'm like a hard pass on that, man. Like I'd probably wreck my whole body doing that. So if you're somebody that loves the outdoor stuff, awesome, it's going to be a blast. Hopefully there's plenty of snow. If you're somebody that's like, hey man, that's cool, I just want to hang out, the Four Seasons, it never misses. It's got fun restaurants, fun bars. And with the town of Whistler, it's a really small, like quaint town. So, and it's walking distance from the Four Seasons. So lots of stuff to do, whether you're activity based or whether you're just like, hey man, I just want to hang out for a few days and relax and catch up. So that's our way of saying thanks. I know we covered a ton there. I'm going to open up look at the chat here and see, but if there's any questions that come up that I missed, I mean, feel free to just unmute or put it in the chat or whatever the best approach is, but would love for the next 9 or 10 minutes here to answer any questions for you.
There were a couple in the comments as you were talking, Andrew. There was one when you were talking about the electronic delivery of the policy. Do you guys also mail a hard copy or is it only electronic delivery?
Great question. So right now I'll answer it two ways. It's either or, but we can always mail one.
Okay.
So in other words, like if it's selected to do an electronic delivery, then that's what we're going to do. But if a client ever calls in and says, hey, or if you reach out to us and say, hey, the client said they didn't get it or they lost it in their email, or we'll absolutely always put one in the mail as well if they ask. And we never charge for it. We heard something the other day that some companies charge for that. I think that's like the weirdest
Oh, that would be
concept ever.
weird.
Yeah, it's like, so wait a second, I'm giving you premium every month and then I'm paying for the copy of the thing I'm giving. I think that's the whole, I'm hoping someone told me the wrong thing because that
I'm
seemed weird.
hoping so too. I haven't
So
experienced that, but that would be weird if I ever got that pushback.
yes. So yes, but at any point we can always put it in the mail as well. But we do call either or up front. So we don't do both right out of the gate. But what we found was that if somebody calls in or you reach out and say, hey, I just talked to my client and they can't find it, we absolutely will put it in mail the same day for you. No problem there.
Sweet. The accidental death rider on the Eagle Premier product, that doesn't have an age it drops off, correct? That's going to ride the
Correct.
policy. Okay.
Yep, for the life of the policy. And it's always double indemnity. So whatever the face amount is, it'll always double it, but it doesn't cut down in half or anything along those lines.
Awesome. Caitlin Mentzer, she told me an hour ago before we were even on this call that she was going to try to sneak in an IUL question to you. If I let her, but I think we have the time. I'll ask you this one first. Do you have an ideal client age on the IUL?
Great question. Well, I'll answer it this way. In the 3 months we've had the product, the average issue age of the client is mid to late 30s. So we don't have an ideal age, but I can tell you just in looking at the millions of dollars we've written in the first 90 days of the product, it's kind of mid to late 30s, which again would probably make about sense, right? Because if you think about it, you're going to have some in the 20s, some in the 30s, some in the 40s. So you're going to land somewhere as an average in there. What I will tell you is it goes up to age 75, which is a great selling point, but always keep in mind that the underwriting is not the same as final expense or critical period coverage. So we do have some people that say, oh, I'm going to write a 68-year-old a $200,000 IUL, and that's awesome. The reality with it is if they get approved medically, that's perfect fit for them. But keep in mind that sometimes 68-year-olds are going to have a few more health conditions than a 39-year-old. So just kind of make sure you're a little bit of field underwriting before you pivot which direction, just to make sure you have the best experience. But I would say, I don't know if that answered your question, but I would say so Gina Pearson had one here for percentages of living benefits. Great question. So how that works from a living benefit standpoint is what we would do. I'll specifically talk about for the IUL because that's what we were talking about. So we base the payout period or the payout amount based on the severity of what happened versus the life expectancy. So that's a really fancy term to basically say if the doctor says based on what happened, if the life expectancy shortened up, in other words, let's say you have a stroke and you have 6 months left to live, well, that's going to be a very large payout, probably close to the whole thing. If you had a small piece of skin cancer removed over lunch and you went back to work after lunch, probably not going to be the best payout for that, because again, it didn't change your life expectancy. So how it works is they file a claim. We work with their doctors and say, hey, what's the severity of it? What's the impact of it? And then based on that, we come to a dollar amount and we work with the doctor and also the client to say, here's what we think it's owed. And the question, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, good. I'm just looking at Amber's here. Do you have a declinable med list for term or IUL? She saw one for the Eagle Premier.
Yep, we don't. We're working on something. We don't have it quite yet. The reason we don't, just to clarify, is the way that we do our underwriting is very risk-based scoring. So in other words, there's some drugs that are absolutely no-go. Like if they're prescribed by an oncologist or something like that, obviously that's going to be a no-go. But because we do risk-based scoring, it actually allows us to approve more clients. So in other words, a drug that another company may say is a knockout, we may say that drug has this risk score to it. But if there's no other drugs involved, that risk score may be under our total. So it's a little hard. When I've been doing this for a long time, we used to have these booklets that were like 50 pages long that had like every drug imaginable. And it was like green drugs, red drugs, yellow. it was a nightmare. Like I tried to be an underwriter for a day and I'd screw it all up and I'd tell people we're taking all this stuff and then we didn't, and underwriting get all pissed off at me. Um we're working on something at a high level to just say, hey, here's the ones that are definite no's, but we don't have it quite yet. But when we do, I'll be sure to get it to you.
Okay, perfect. Caitlin, you want to unmute and ask your pressing question here?
If it's
Yes,
a hard
thank
one, I'm
you.
going to make up the answer just so you know.
Okay, so I was under the impression with the IUL that the main, like when you quote it and go to do the app, that premium, that the initial premium, that is likely to last them forever, but like the guarantee, what is it? The guaranteed
Mhm.
years of insurance, that is like kind of more like a worst case scenario. Like if the stock market did really, 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 really bad, that was a worst case scenario. But then I recently talked to someone who said if you do the initial, then it's likely to lapse in that time, like with that guarantee, and that you should be looking at the target premium, which isn't what comes up as the quoting tool. So I'm like trying to like figure out what's right, so I know, what I'm actually, looking at when I try and write that.
That's a great question, by the way. So the answer is a couple ways. Number one, the quoting, to clarify, the quoting software that we use when we first came out with our IUL a couple months ago, it quotes it based on, it gives you a premium amount to base it on the death benefit, and then it also has that primary guarantee that will run out for 25, 26, 27, 30 years. So to answer your first question would be that it's guaranteed to last at least that long. And if the market does even better than expected, it'll last longer than that. To answer your second question, the premium that's quoted isn't target. It's actually a little bit lower than target. So the second piece that we have coming out with our IUL, which we're targeting for, no pun intended, targeting fourth quarter this year, is to have it quotable where you're either quoting it at a premium or you're quoting it at target. So if the client wants to raise it to target, they certainly can. Once the policy is issued, they can call into our office. We can raise it to target for them, and which obviously would make it last even longer. But the goal initially was just to be transparent. One of our big competitors, they have what they call the Easy Solve button on theirs, and about 85 to 90% is what we were hearing was being done on Easy Solve. So we went directly for that initially, which was again comparable apples to apples premium wise, but we'll be adding more features to it. So the long answer to this short question you had was it's guaranteed at least to last that period of time. If the market does better, it'll last even longer. But to answer your question is if you run it up to target, once the policy is issued, it will run longer because again, more premiums coming in. The other piece that we get asked from time to time is up to target commissionable, and the answer is yes. So if we're charging, I'm making up numbers here right now, but if we're charging $60 a month and target's 85, and the client says, hey, a couple months into it, I want to go up to target, that difference of $25 is commissionable to you all as well. So up to target's commissionable. But we're going to have that feature closer to, again, fourth quarter this year to be able to do it. You're actually going to see 3 or 4 different, not versions, but additions to our IUL as we go along. The ultimate goal is to have it compete in both spaces, the death benefit space and also the investment space. So we got a couple cool indexes we're working on and things like that people who went to school a hell of a lot longer than me are working on, and I just get to share it with you when we get it done. But it'll be a pretty cool process when it's all said and done. But initially, we just looked at it to get the best premium rate we can for the client for the largest death benefit.
Love it so much. Well, we are out of time. So, and I love honoring people's time and giving people know it so they know exactly what to expect on Wednesday nights. But Andrew, super, super great to have you on, man. Thanks for being a face with the name and giving us a point of contact that we can go to as we're learning and we're growing in this whole thing. I feel like I'm still brand new drinking from a fire hose, and I know all of my agencies all new, and so learning as much as we can. This is all great. Obviously you can see in the comments here you've got a bunch of people just really grateful for your time this evening.
You bet. Well, in closing, I appreciate you all as well. I did put in there, if you didn't see it, a very easy link is symmetry.americo.com. Hopefully you know how to spell both of those names. But symmetry.americo.com, it's designed specifically for you all. So it has all of our training videos. It has links to everything. The last thing I'll bring up is if you're brand new to us and you say, I love what I hear in the e-app, but there's no way I'm going to go live until I know how to do it. We have a demo site that mimics our production site. So you can go in the demo site, you can play with the e-app, you can see how it all works. You can put in your cell phone number in the demo site and have it text you. So you see what the client gets via text. So you can be the expert. Again, you don't have to, it's not required, but it is something you can kind of go in and play with if you say, hey, I want to know how all this works. But again, man, I'm excited. We're going to do this again sometime in the next couple of months. I'm excited to jump on. It's been fun hanging out with you guys. We've been looking forward to this. Like I said, I've just from a distance admired Jim and all his growth, and it's been a lot of fun to jump on here, and I appreciate the time, everyone.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks again so much. Team, love y'all. Blow up my phone. You know that my favorite agents blow up my phone the most. And we'll see y'all tomorrow.
All right,
Have a
see
good
ya.
night.